Welcome everyone to Financial Wellness Live. My name is Camaya and I'm joined today by my awesome colleagues, Sasha and Kathy. And we have a fun topic for you today. We're going to be talking about vacations and staycations. So I'm going to have my colleagues kick those off.
Well, so we wanted to think about how do we take these vacations? Why does it matter? And how can we do it maybe a little more cost effectively if that's a need in your family? So maybe we'll start out with why we think vacations matter and why it might be a part of your budget and some of the research behind them.
Yep, absolutely. So vacation, what is it, right? It's just taking time off from your regular activities. So whether you're working full-time, part-time, you have other responsibilities. So taking a little bit of time off so you can relax and just do recreational activities or, just chance to rejuvenate. So we found some research too because a lot of researchers have been interested in the benefits of vacation and why people take vacation or why they should take vacation. And so one of the fun articles that we looked at was from DeBloom and colleagues, and they looked at the long-term, short-term benefits on your health and wellness of taking vacation. And so they found that looking at the length of time that people take vacation was important because taking 2 days off. So we have a long weekend coming up, right? We have Memorial Weekend coming up. So taking 3 days off versus taking a couple weeks off, the benefits are very different. So the longer vacation that you get time to rejuvenate and you get more time to maybe spend with your loved ones, it ends up having a little bit longer effect than just a long weekend. And they also found that sort of the peak time for vacation is around day 8. And so, going right into vacation and spending more time off with your family and getting a lot of that, in-person time that you need. They also found that, even during long summer vacations, there are positive effects of taking some of the time out for yourself and for your family.
So it sounds like I need to take a 3-week vacation. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's what was in my mind. Day 8. It takes a while to really disconnect and relax, and I take it. So
yes,
that may work into people's schedules, or that might not work into everybody's schedule.
Exactly.
And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Right.
All the different types of vacations.
The research says one thing, but what do you say? So we want you to give us your questions. Remember to put your questions in the comment box because we want to hear from you today as well too. So even if you don't have a question, but you just have a comment about something that we say, we would love to hear from you.
Or any personal financial topics we're more than happy to tackle as well. So one of the things I think that we should talk about, well, I know we have a little game.
Yes.
So Kathy's going to have us do a little game while we're waiting for questions to come in. And hopefully, but so this is actually from one of our lesson pieces that we worked on. Created. Everyone was like,
what's the word?
I had witchy hands. I was like, we made it, right? But we use this with seniors to help them kind of think about different vacations. It's been a really fun tool, so we are going to use it today.
We never really did say, but we work for University of Illinois Extension, and we are educators and teach personal finance. So just in case we get that on that video, probably would be a good idea. We're not just random people that decide to talk about vacations. All right,
we didn't hijack the university.
So sometimes I think there's some real value in talking with the people you might want to take a vacation with before you start planning it. So, and thinking about what's important to you and how do you like to take vacations, and maybe thinking a little bit out of the box. Maybe, you've always done it a certain way, but it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm going to ask Sasha and Camaya to each pick one of these questions, and then they can either choose to answer it themselves or they can ask somebody else.
Are you going to pick one?
Oh, yeah, I'll pick one. Okay.
I'm going to ask the two of you.
Oh, boy. Okay.
What would you like to do? Explore a city by yourself or go on a guided tour, and why?
Ooh.
That's a toughie.
Yeah. I'm going to say go with a guided tour. So I like traveling for a little bit of history, learning more about the area that I'm traveling, how it ties to the economy, right? So learning a little bit more about that. So I like the guided tours. I even remember I went to New York so many times, but I didn't go all the way up into the Empire State Building. So I took my 6-year-old with me, and we went on this kind of like guided tour where you could download the app and you learn about like the history and all the work that went into it. So for me, it would be a guided tour.
So you used a guided tour that was on an app, so it was a pretty low cost tour.
Yes.
Okay, so I had never even thought about that actually.
Yeah.
So when you were talking guided tour, I was like, oh, you got that expense.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you got like, you're holding on to something, your earphones in, you walk around like a weirdo.
So, yeah, because I like to, when I go into if I have enough time, it's kind of fun to do the quick overview guided tours. Like sometimes they have like a city bus or a bus tour where you get to see all the sites, but then you can kind of pick where you want to go back and spend more time. So I'm going to say both.
Both.
I want to do both.
I've had that feeling that was coming from you.
Yeah.
Who wants to go next?
All right, I can go next. Okay,
Are you
ready? Okay, some people throw a dart at a map to choose a location for travel. How do you choose a new or different place? I'm not going to answer this one. I'm going to bounce it on these two.
You get to go first.
Yeah, so I guess things come up. Like usually we do a lot of travel with different family members, extended family. So often somebody just suggests something like, hey, we're going here. You want to come too? Or somebody in our immediate family is like, we want to do this. What do you think? So, and I'm kind of like up for anything typically travel wise. So I don't usually choose. I just go where people are going.
For myself and my husband and my son, I think we go to a lot of like the same places, but when we try to find a new place, we try to find a place we both have never been, and that way we can kind of explore it together.
That's cool.
So we also have like this small goal of like trying to go to every state before the end of our lifetime, I guess. And so we've been trying to like mark off states on like a map and do that. So
Cool.
it's been fun.
Well, we have a question.
I saw.
So Caitlin asks, when sharing a vacation house or timeshare with friends or family or both, any tips on dividing expenses like food?
It's a big one.
Yeah. Well, I can jump in and say one strategy. I think different strategies work for different people, but sometimes, you kind of have to explore those. So I'm actually meeting my sisters and parents and their families at a place this summer. And what we plan to do is, I think, we're staying in different places, different housing, but is we're each going to take a dinner and cook or buy or whatever is up to each person, a dinner for everybody. And then I imagine, I'm expecting that our breakfast and lunches are kind of on our own for our nuclear groups, because I don't think we'll all be up at the same time. So, so that's one way that we kind of share that expense and the chore of fixing dinner.
I would say, I think communication is key. Just like having that communication up front. Maybe because of your finances, you might have to have things split instead of like providing for everyone, even though you own the timeshare or you have, you rented it. Like just because you're in charge doesn't mean that you have to take care of all the expenses.
Good point.
I see that a lot happening with a lot of people I know. So just kind of being upfront, honest about like, hey, we're going to split the cost of the food, and then, like, I can make it, but, like, we needed to financially pitch in, so I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think especially when it gets into those kind of extras, like, I don't think anybody really minds sharing a box of cereal.
Yeah.
But when it gets into things like beverages or alcohol.
Or meat, really.
Then I think there's this feeling like, well, I don't know if I want to pay for your beverages.
Yeah, I'm not paying for your alcohol.
So,
yeah. I'm not doing it. And I think, some of those things are, like, common, right? Like, even, like, at dinner out, you wouldn't pay for someone else's maybe beverages, but, like, I think on a vacation, it just becomes more apparent for those kind of things.
Yeah.
So.
Great questions. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's any other tips. I do know from talking to some college students, but I can't remember the exact names, that there are apps out there now where you can put in. So let's say somebody's going to the grocery store, somebody else is going to the grocery store.
The Venmo, PayPal.
Then but also an apps where you can put in what everybody pays, and you put in like how you're going to divide it, and then it just kind of calculates it out for you. So it tells you who pays who what. So unfortunately, I can't think of what that app is called, but I'm sure if you look around, you can find that.
Even you can do that with like a tip calculator, like. The bill was $100, let's say $175, and then you just say divide by 4, and it'll just give you that. So I think thinking ahead on that, communicating about it, looking for easy ways like apps,
to keep track of things, because sometimes maybe one person's paying for the gas in the car, or, there's ways that you can't always divide it right away.
Or you can always do it at the end too of the trip. Like you could always, someone has all the gas, and then at the end of the trip we say, well, I spent $300 on gas. Let's divide it out and go from there. So
that's probably a good idea. Have somebody pay all from one expense, because we always get mixed up, like who did it, where, and what.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Yeah.
So
good job.
Okay.
Kathy, do you want to ask us your question?
Yes. So how far away or how many hours would you drive for a weekend getaway, and why?
For a weekend. So we're saying like
It could be a long weekend.
Long weekend.
We'll
okay.
allow for
okay.
a long weekend.
Okay. I'm not very good in the car for very long.
What is
the longest I think I've ever been in the car was probably 9 hours when we were driving to the Smoky Mountains. And that was pushing it. And especially if you have like kids in the car too. So it depends on who is with you and the type of room you have in your vehicle. All of those things are important. But I think I might want to do like longer road trips, but in bigger vehicles and not a lot of small complaining children.
And maybe with more time.
And more time, yes.
Right,
than a long weekend.
You might not want to spend your whole weekend in the car.
Yes.
A long weekend, probably 5 hours is my max. 5 hours is about the time where everyone gets kind of antsy and I just am done. So if it's in a 5 hour radius of where I am, I'm good.
Yeah.
But anything more than that,
not going to happen.
no, definitely not.
Yeah. But probably, again, one of those things really to kind of think about in terms of how you want that experience to be is how much time are you going to be in the car or transporting, whether it's on a plane or a car, or a train or a boat or whatever, versus your whole time on vacation. Because, like you said, it's not always the most relaxing part of the trip.
Yeah, it's not fun to leave on a Friday and then come back on a Sunday and only have 12 or less than 24 hours in a place. It's not fun.
Right.
It's not fun at all.
On a related note, what time does your family get up to start those drives?
Oh, yeah.
And how do you decide that? That's maybe that's not a financial question, but it is a communication issue.
Definitely. Oh.
Yeah.
My dad used to make us start at 4 a.m., which was
That's so
really early. He was like, well, I was awake, so I figured everybody else should be awake.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So
I think Mark is my son, he kind of dictates what time we go. What time does he get up, and then we can go. But it's very rare that I'm up before the sun.
All right. So remember, you can ask us any kind of questions. They can be about any personal finance topic, money questions that you might have. But we're also just chatting about vacations since we're coming up on that summer season.
Yes.
And things that we can do to help save money. So,
we've been talking about vacations. So for a lot of people, that's kind of a loaded term for them, in my opinion, because lots of times when we hear vacation, we see what our friends online are doing, right? They're flying here, they're going there, all these fancy places, new experiences that they're having. But when we think about some of the other things that we can do for relaxation and to spend more time with our loved ones, we can do the staycation piece, right?
Yes.
So that is an important piece, and I know Sasha and Kathy has done some work around this as well too, with the staycation piece and how important that is to consider for yourself and your family.
Yeah, so I personally have taught about staycations multiple times. I personally think that they are a really good thing. So one of the things I like about staycations is that you get to. I think a lot of times we like to explore the places around, out away from our homes, and we don't really get to understand what our hometown is about. And so just seeing what some of those things are, whether it's going to the library or a movie or a play or a show, going to the park district. Just kind of getting to experience your little hometown and your little life where you are. So I really enjoyed that.
And to clarify what staycation is, right? So it's kind of like a vacation that you spend at home, and that could be involved, going to do different things within your local areas, kind of what Sasha just explained. And so for a lot of people, it's attending your local festivals, going to awesome trails. The other day, my family and I drove an hour from home to go on this amazing trail that went on for miles. And it was such an amazing experience with these beautiful waterfalls. And I'm like, oh, Central Illinois, you have so much to offer. It's like all these beautiful things, right? Like these beautiful things that we would never have explored if we weren't looking for something to get a little bit more experience and to get to know our area a lot more.
Yeah, and so I would also mention that staycation's like something that's less than 2 hours away from home, but you can also stay in your hometown too. But staycation has those benefits of there's no travel days, so there's no getting on a plane, going to the airport, going through security, and messing with TSA.
You don't have to pack.
You don't have to pack. But the other thing I think that's important about staycations is that, yes, there are probably things that you have to do, like maybe you need to have like a honey-do list and you have lots of things that you need to get done. The goal of the staycation is for you to stay at home and just kind of relax instead of having to do that list. So just wanted to mention that as well.
And, even like touching on a point that we all were talking about just a short while ago before we started recording, for a lot of people too, like travel brings a lot of anxiety and it's hard, especially if you have young children or you just have a lot of concerns about travel. Like it's hard for some people. So like the staycation come into play really well here.
And I just saw on a community forum yesterday a question that came up. It was a mom's forum, and they were saying, what do we do with our kind of teens that are maybe 14, too old for a lot of camps, but we don't want them just like sitting around the whole summer. And I think it's a really great time to help build life skills, including how to set up a spending plan. And so if you have teens, you might challenge them to come up with a staycation plan, like a day or, what could they do, and to fit it within a budget. So, you say, we can spend this much. So what would you suggest that our family do on a Saturday or whatever day? And how are you going to figure out all the costs of a travel? Because there's a lot of different things, even with a staycation, that can add in.
But that's a really great idea for teens, especially because I do see a lot of people posting like, well, my kids are this age, I don't know what to do with them. Like, what's there to do around here? Like, well, why have them research it themselves and like kind of look at some things that they would like, because maybe they'll pick something that you didn't expect them to pick.
And I think it's a really good practice too to think through like all the costs associated.
Yes.
So, obvious ones are like if there's an admittance fee, like how much do you have to pay to get in? But then there's things like food, there's transportation, there could be souvenirs or not, so, those kinds of things, and have them build like what they expect to pay and then track what you actually end up having to pay out that day. And it can be done relatively simply, but yet that's the basic principles of putting together a spending plan.
Yeah.
So
that's a great idea.
Fantastic.
So let's talk a little bit about the different types of travel that are out there. I think that's a good way to kind of segue until we get some more questions, because we love your questions.
Yes.
Please send them in. But I think when I think about different types of travel, I think about in broader terms, not like locations. I think about more about things like, am I going to a theme park? Am I going all inclusive, like so that all my meals are paid for and my drinks and my all of that, or am I doing like a really, really big adventure, like going overseas, or domestic travel versus international travel? Those are the kind of things I think about when I'm thinking about planning my next vacation. I don't know about you guys.
I do too. I feel like that's where we go, and thinking about what is like a family vacation versus a vacation with just me and my husband. So we think a lot about like whether it's going to be going somewhere to go visit family and maybe staying close to family, or whether we're planning to travel out of the country for like a new experiences. So it's kind of like along that route too.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it just comes back to time and energy, but also finances. So I have to admit, I'm not a big one on budgeting. It's not something I do a lot of in my own personal life. We keep our spending somewhat under control. But I don't like to write it all down anymore. I've done that in the past, but I don't do that so much now. But when it comes to travel, I feel like that's the time when my husband and I really both need to sit down and talk about like, how much do we want to spend on this event, and do like, a sketch out of what we think the costs are, because it can get a lot fast, and it's not always based on how far you go. So maybe, obviously the number of days has an effect, but, and then you have an idea. So I was wondering, like, can you think back on all your travel and things? And they don't know what I'm asking. So,
Secret questions.
All your travel, like when you were on a trip and your budget just got blown. Like things didn't work out. And I can share one if you guys don't.
So I have one too.
Okay.
I'm gonna go.
I don't care.
Okay, I'll go then. She said
It's like paper, rock, scissors.
And then what did you do? How did you handle it?
So we, so one year, we decided that we were going to drive from Michigan to Nashville because we were just so pumped and really, we decided the night before.
Oh my gosh.
So impulsiveness. So, if you know, like my husband and I, we have a little bit of spontaneity. As much as we're planners, we're also very spontaneous at times. And so this was one of our spontaneous trip. And, you know, turning out we wanted to stop along the way. So hotel along the way, the type of hotel that we were able to get into once we get to Nashville, food and all the sightseeing things. So by the time we got back, we looked and we're like, oh my gosh, we could have taken a trip to Jamaica. And so since then, that was a few years ago, no more impulsive, that kind of vacation, because we were thinking that it was going to be a wonderful road trip, which it was. But all the additional fees that we ended up paying was way too much.
I'll tell you that when we went on our honeymoon, we went a little crazy. We had actually had a honeymoon fund. Kathy, I don't remember if you remember. Kathy was invited to my wedding.
I wasn't around.
No,
then.
she wasn't around.
I would have been invited too.
She would have been invited. But we had like a website set up that people could pay for experiences.
That's
for
right. I think we did actually.
And I
pay
think,
for it.
yeah. So, but I think one of the things we didn't realize was how quickly the cash would go. So like one of the things we wanted to do was like swim with the dolphins, but apparently I only put the expenses for one person, so we didn't go do that. But I think by the end of the trip we realized how much money we spent on food, and so now we are more conscious, and we usually try to stay at a place that there's also a kitchen, so we can try to cut those costs, especially breakfast, because Kyle and I are like big breakfast foodie people. Like we will just eat all the pancakes and the eggs and everything. So now we were like, no, we have to make sure that we have yogurt and eggs and pick up those things you can just get at the grocery store for a lot cheaper.
Yeah,
so
that's a good example.
Yeah.
Yes.
So mine's along the lines of food too. We once had an opportunity to take our whole family, including our sons, for a multi-week vacation to Europe, which we were very excited about. But because it was so long, we really did like look at how much we wanted to spend each day, week for food, because we just thought that, we already knew what we were going to spend on travel getting over there, but that was sort of that piece we weren't sure about. Well, I have twin sons, and they went through a growing spurt while we were on the vacation. And all of a sudden we realized, like, we could not fill them up. Like, they were just eating so much. They were teenage boys. And I said to my husband, what are we going to do? Because we are blowing our budget here. And he's like, well, what do you want us to do? I said, I think we need to feed them a lot of ice cream, because that's really
just keep feeding them ice cream.
And make sure that we can fill them up before we go into the more expensive places. But that one just really took us by surprise. But that's one of the joys of having twins. So these things come in double whammies. But
all right.
So we just had to put it on credit card. That was all. I mean, we had no. At that point, you really can't say you can't eat for the next few weeks. So, and then deal with it when we got home, which worked out. But it was a big surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, don't forget to share your questions or comments with us. We would love to hear from you.
That's what I'm doing when I'm looking down, looking for comments and questions. Because,
do we have a question out there? Because I'm
not seeing anything.
Oh, and nobody's on the Illinois extension page. Okay. So you are. You should be able to see it. Look on yours, Camaya, and see if we can't find it somewhere. So
that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, we'll find that question here in just a moment.
Yep.
We're all a little bit just figuring out Facebook Live and how to make the most out of it.
And I mean, honestly, I just got back from vacation yesterday, and I leave again on Thursday, so I'm just like, well, I'm here today.
So while we're looking for that question, here's another one. What is your best piece of money-saving advice regarding travel? What tip do you think has helped you out?
Excellent question.
I can start.
Okay.
But kind of along lines of, breakfast items. Like sometimes we'll also do like lunch. So for me, it's more about looking for places where food is already provided. Like a lot of hotel stays that we do, if we do stay at a hotel, I'll look to see if we have breakfast provided as well. So that's kind of my tip is like look and see where you can get food for free. I'm all about that life. Even if it just costs like a little bit more, I guess, you know, like that's my trade-off is I can have breakfast for free and not have to worry about that extra $1 expense. Because usually breakfast for us is like $30. It's kind of,
yeah,
20
breakfast
to
tends to
$30.
be, I think again,
And multiply that times 8 days.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
So I have a strategy that I've been using since college. And I feel fortunate enough to have like friends and family just all over the country. So in traveling, like a lot in what I do to like save on money has to do with who's close by, where can I stay? Like I have friends like in Florida, so in like some of the travel, you know, depending on who I'm going with, to say arrange for stay to reduce like the cost of like staying at a hotel. Like my family and I are going on a trip for Memorial Weekend, and we have an aunt who lives out of state, and she has a lot of room for us, so we're able to travel that way. So we're spending on gas and on food, but not on stay, so not on hotel.
Yes.
So those are some of the things that we still do.
Yeah,
I do that too sometimes. Yeah, it just depends.
and I think also we talked about breakfast, but it kind of depends on what kind of travel you're doing. But I found that a lot of times packing lunches, like having a cooler where you've just got some lunch things and you can pull over. Our family likes to do a lot of things kind of outside, so and it doesn't work so well if you're in the middle of the city. But if you're like hiking or things like that, then being able to take lunches along too. To me, the food actually is one of the pieces that adds up.
Yes.
But and also, you know, if you enjoy camping, that's another way to really save.
Definitely.
I think at times. So
To kind of piggyback off what you said, one of the things I found is that saving money is better at lunch, like at a nice restaurant. It's like on our honeymoon, we are so excited.
Yeah.
There's this place in Key West, it's called Sunset Key, and they have a beautiful restaurant. And so we love going there, but we usually go for lunch instead of dinner because obviously dinner is crazy. It's a sunset, it's Sunset Key, it's beautiful, but just being able to go and enjoy that at a cheaper price is so much more convenient for us than spending lots of money. But
So we do have a question, and we found it. So the question is, what are your thoughts on travel insurance? Because that can be a cost.
Do you want to explain what that is for some people who...
Yeah, so that's a good point.
Yes.
So travel insurance is where before you travel, you take out insurance that says if you, for some reason, have to cancel your trip, you know, then it will pay you back for some of those things costs that you would have incurred, like your flights, possibly, your hotels, things like that. Now, you always have to read the details carefully to see what it will cover and in what situations, because all policies are a little bit different. So, anyway, so that's what travel insurance is. And I don't, you know...
They have like the trip protection too, where they protect like the flight piece. So for a lot of once you're traveling, so you might be able to purchase like even like trip protection to say, you know, if something happens and you need to cancel your flight, you pay this amount and your trip is protected. So they have that in addition to some of the other insurance piece.
Yeah.
so I think we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, like beforehand, but I think trip insurance is important for people who might be older adults, who might be working through some, health issues, and just to make sure that in case something does happen, that they have that protection. But we also talked about like maybe if your family member has a medical condition or something that comes up.
Or a job where you might have to cancel
Yes.
because of something going on at work. You just can't leave.
Yeah.
So you really have to think about your situation. It's not cheap, in my opinion. So it's not something you automatically want to do. And you might really look at also what costs would you incur if you canceled? Because sometimes, some places, if you have 36 hours of notice or whatever, you can cancel and not pay so much. Maybe a percentage of it. So don't assume that all the costs that you've put out, number one, will be covered, and number two, that you couldn't cancel and get some of them back. So you got to do that comparing.
And kind of just to piggyback quickly, like I think some pieces of like our trip we don't book until the end, which may not be the best decision, but like we usually don't book like car rentals until the end. We don't book like the parking at the airport until the end, like right, a few days before, because like then we know for sure that we're going. So that's why we don't do it till the end, because sometimes you don't get that money back, and it's kind of hard to deal with that piece.
Yeah,
so.
Good point.
We have some questions. Yay!
We have one from Carla.
Yes.
She says, "Good to see you all." Good to see you too, Carla.
Hey, Carla.
She says, "So with young kids, it's like now just gone. That they want souvenirs.
Yes.
Everywhere they travel, they want the souvenir.
And
any tips for budgeting for this expense?"
One example, because I with my 6-year-old, one example that we've used, so my parents live in New York, and we travel there a couple times per year, and she always wants souvenir, just like your kids, Carla. And
like most kids.
Yeah.
So a big part for her, so she has like an allowance, and then she get little special occasion money from grandparents and great-grandparents. So I have her save a big part of that, and she's able to take that money with her so she can get like her souvenirs. But it doesn't always work out like that, depending on like your situation, right? Other thoughts?
I would just say, instead of, maybe if you don't give an allowance, Carla, that maybe you give them a small budget for the souvenirs. So maybe it's not super expensive. Maybe, I don't know, I was thinking like $30 each per kid, and saying, here's, once it's gone, it's gone. But, you need to make some decisions, and I think that will help. Obviously, if you're only in a place for like 1 or 2 days and they can't go back to that place, like it's hard to make that decision. They might do more impulsive buys, but at least it'll help kind of maybe give them more autonomy, and also help them make their own spending plan.
And then you don't have to argue about it at every place you go.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
I found to be a real plus. So yeah, I definitely second what Sasha said about, thinking about how much do you want them to have control of.
Yes.
There were times where we would give them that budget, and then maybe we'd get somewhere and they had, I don't know, something I thought was really cool, like t-shirts or something. And I'd be like, okay, on top of that, we'll buy you each a t-shirt or whatever. So,
Yeah.
But you kind of have to think about where you're going and what they're going to see and what they're going to find. Now, the interesting part is sometimes then they ask you just a heads up, can I save that money and take it home and buy, Pokemon cards or whatever? And you just might want to have in your mind, is this like supposed to be a souvenir, or can this go home and buy whatever they thought they wanted to buy at home?
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's a right answer to that, but I just can tell you that may come up. So,
Is it okay to say no?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It is.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So,
I had like a very instant reaction. No.
that's because I will take your picture right here. This is your souvenir, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's just like for, that piece with saying, okay, I know you would like to have something from here, but no.
That's not what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Well, I know you would probably say it a lot nicer than just no. But, even like,
I don't know if I would.
about that.
I do think, like my husband and I think, because we just went on a trip without our son. So like we were thinking about like, well, what kind of things do we want to bring back for him? And so like we had this kind of internal debate about like looking for something that was really unique and cool from where we just were. And so, having that discussion even between us, I was like, well, I don't want to get him like something like I can get anywhere. I want to get him something that's kind of nice. So kind of just to also piggyback on the, if they're not there, then do you bring them something back?
Yeah.
okay,
All right,
have
we
a
hope we
couple
did
more.
that one.
Got
So,
more
Yes.
questions.
Yes,
all right.
thank you.
So here's a in-depth question
Okay.
from Jamie, and they say, hello, I just graduated and found a full-time job.
Congrats.
Yay! That's impressive. Okay.
Yes.
What should I be focused on? Student loans, investing, buying a house, etc. I'm already thinking about retirement as well. Thinking of finances and what should I do from this point is very overwhelming. Yeah, well, you got your whole life to think about it, so don't fret too much right now, but it's great to get started on it.
So we recently just did a webinar on student loans for our Get Savvy, Grow Your Green stuff. And so if you're interested in, learning more about student loans and some of the things that we talked about, because one of the things that we did discuss in that webinar was, do you pay your student loans during the grace period or not? And does that make any difference? And it does. But just, that way, if you wanted to check it out, it is online. It's on YouTube. It's on our Illinois Student Money page, and that's what's called IL Student Money. It's on that YouTube page, but that will help you give you a better idea. But my other quick tip is, like, if you have a matching with your retirement, you definitely want to make sure that you match dollar to dollar what you get from your employer. So, maybe you want to start off looking at some other things first, but, make sure that you get that match with your employer. So just want to say that.
One other tip I'd just throw out there is that it's, while it's fantastic that you have a job and it looks like there's a clear path in front of you, it can be a challenge if you end up with a lot of fixed expenses that are higher when you first start out. So sometimes it's good to maybe get, work for a while, make sure this job is just, going to be a good job for you. It's going to hang in there before you buy a new car or lock in a home mortgage or, those kinds of expenses where if something changed or you found that there was another opportunity you wanted to pursue, you don't want to be locked into so many fixed expenses, including your student loan debt, that you can't have that flexibility, especially when you're beginning your career. So that's another tip out there.
Yes. The other, I think just to piggyback on everything we were saying, is that also having an emergency fund is important. Whether that's, you can start small, and I think starting small is the best way. Whether it's your deductible for your car insurance or your renter's insurance, and then moving it up, closer to, $1,000, and then, whatever you feel comfortable. Because most people say 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, but there's varying degrees of how much money you can save for emergencies. So I think just having it enough that you feel comfortable is important.
Right.
And not to do too much self-promotion, but that's kind of what we're here for, I guess, is if you're just starting out, there is an online course that you can take for free called Financial Planning for Young Adults. It is on the Coursera platform, so it's worldwide. So Financial Planning for Young Adults. I am one of the authors, so that's my kind of disclaimer. But it does go through and talk about a lot of these topics that you're talking about and ask you questions to think about and try to put it into perspective. So you have the option to pay when you go in, but you can also take it for free. And if you pay, you just get access to quiz answers. So I usually suggest people do it for free. Yeah. So take a look at that. That's another resource out there that you might find helpful.
The other thing I also want to, as another resource, because she did ask about buying a house, is that I did a whole series on our blog post about Sasha learns how to buy a house. And then there's like tons of different, I think I did like 12 posts about this, and I even did like a year follow-up afterwards. So if you're interested in reading more about how to buy a house, because you do have to have at least, I think, 90 days worth of income before you can purchase a house. I didn't know that prior to when I started looking when I first got hired at University of Illinois. So it's just something to be considerate of. So hopefully, Jamie, this answers some of your questions, and hopefully now that you have some resources. I don't know if you live close by or nearby, but Kathy does have her Money Mentors program here in Champaign. Oh yeah. And so if you're looking for somebody to help you one-on-one, Kathy has mentees who are more than happy to sit down with you and help you decide like what's most important for you. So. Cool. Money Mentors, yeah. But if you're someplace else, like if you're in the Bloomington area, Camaya has some there. I'm up in Kankakee. If you want to come talk to me, we can make that happen. So,
absolutely.
We have more questions. Donna Andruk says, "How do you feel about using Rakuten? Is that right?
I guess.
Rakuten.
We might have to Google that one.
Yeah, to get cash back and for in-store purchases, you have to give your credit card number to use it, which makes me hesitant to do. I would just.
Do you know what that is?
I have no idea what that is.
I don't know what that is.
As we speak, but I would tell you that anything that might be asking for your credit card number, I'd be kind of sketchy about, anyways. And I wouldn't
jump on it.
I wouldn't jump on it. Yeah. But we can definitely look at it and then let you know. So
the other thing is you might kind of do a Google review, like what is Rakuten and what are the pros and cons? But if you're really interested in getting cash back on things, I know that some credit cards do that too. Yes. So that might be another avenue to explore. As long as it doesn't make you buy more So that's my, it again comes back to knowing yourself and how you are with money. Sometimes I think if we know we're getting cash back, it might like encourage us to spend a little more. But if you're a person that is like, no, I'm not going to spend more, but I don't mind getting the perk, that's something to look at.
It used to be Ebates.
Ebates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Rakuten. I have no idea how to say that.
You caught us on that one. That was a good stumper question there. So
I mean, I think Ebates has been around a long time. I think it just depends on, if you actually use it or not. But I would definitely look at the reviews for Ebates and then, make a decision because that's what it used to be. So.
Then anytime you do, one of the kind of good money practices in any situation is always check your credit card statements carefully.
Yes.
And make sure that you're not getting any charges that you don't know what they are. And it could even be very small charges that reoccur. Those could get added on and you might not pick up on them, but they can be, over time, they really add up. So I really encourage people, look at your charges carefully and make sure that you know where they are. And if not, ask, because that's your right. That's your...
Consumer
you can do that. Yeah.
So while we're still talking about vacation planning, one of the things I wanted to bring up was actually making a spending plan for your vacation, whether it's a short weekend or a long weekend. And then always, so that's important to do. And I think, we have some resources that are available. But, just looking at all the expenses that you're going to incur, including food, gas, travel. But I also think that adding an extra 15% onto your trip budget is a good plan, just in case something does happen.
Yeah, like your twins go through a growth spurt.
Or you're stuck in the airport all day, like I was yesterday. So I think just making sure that you have that extra wiggle room in your, and some things you might not want to purchase while you're here. You might not want to travel with it, like things like sunscreen or hats, or maybe you want to purchase that while you're on your trip instead of doing it in advance, or even I always worry about things exploding in my suitcase. I don't know about you guys, but I'd like think about my shampoo just going everywhere, and I'm like, oh no,
the pressure.
I have lots of anxiety about travel, so those are the things I think about. So I always make sure pack them in different bags and do those kind of things. But
and like so many things, I think also there's, if you haven't traveled a lot or you're really trying to watch your budget, writing down what you spend each day and kind of taking a look at it at night, it keeps that cost kind of at the top of our brain, so you can think about it and say, whoa, here's day 4 and we've already spent this much. Maybe tomorrow will be a good day to have a low cost day, because we're somewhere we can do a low cost day, and then the next day we're gonna be able to spend a little more when we go do something else. I think kind of watching that can help, and even little things do add up. So it always, one of my pet peeves is how much water costs at airports.
Yes.
And so when you could carry, this is my pet peeve, right?
Right. Yes.
Especially if you have 5 people in your family and everybody wants a water bottle. So,
I didn't even think about that. That's a lot.
Like we could have done something fun with that. Instead we're drinking water. Yeah. So, having people, it may be worth, making sure everybody has a water bottle that they can fill from the faucet. There's little things that you can do that really do make a difference.
And a lot of airports really promote that now, that they are looking for, you to refill.
Yes, the fountain, so you can have your water bottle.
It's like we always bring ours. Like we just brought ours back from our trip.
And, having like that plan. So say, for example, you have a plan this year. That could be like a guide for you for the coming years to see what you would want to do with your family or do with your friends for vacation.
I mean, it's part of being a budget, right? It's like looking at what you did in the past. Making some changes and then moving forward.
And I think it reduces the stress. For me, if I kind of know what my husband and I have already decided we can spend, then I don't have to fret about it, because we've already made that decision. We've communicated about it. As long as I kind of have an idea of how much we're spending each day or how much I have each day to spend, then it makes those kind of the rest of the trip more relaxing for me.
I agree.
There's another thing I wanted to talk about too. For me, doing like local things are very important.
Yes.
So going to like our parks and rec department, or looking through their lovely catalog of events to find out more about what they offer, because a lot of them offer things that are low cost, and of course there are other things that are no cost to them at all. So what are some things that you can do through like your parks and rec department. And then some other things, of course, including trails. I was just talking about like my family's experience with like going on trails, packing like a lunch to go on the trail. What are some things that you two have done in the past?
Well, I mean, I live in this town that has a wonderful park district, and so we're really lucky. But you know, to be honest, it's very relaxing to me to grab a picnic dinner and go to a park and listen to the music, and we can do that like almost every, if not, I'm sure actually every weekend in the summer we could find a park with music, and that costs nothing, and it's just also kind of a good way to like, on a Friday or Saturday night, just to like calm down, slow down, that whole thing.
One thing I like, just to kind of also piggyback on it, like I also like to look at the events going on in the city that I'm going to. Like we went to Nashville right before Marcus, my son, was born, and we went to like a park, and there was like an all-day music festival, and and there were food trucks, so that was kind of fun. But with Kyle, my husband and I could just sit and we can listen to the music and just kind of enjoy the space, and it was warm and it was sunny, and then we got to like, you know, see kind of like the locals. It was kind of a nice experience. I like doing stuff like that.
Okay, well, I'm going to send out a call here for any questions, because it doesn't have to be about travel. It can be on any personal finance topic. Maybe we should talk a little bit about keeping your money and your credit card safe when you travel.
We can talk about that.
Because that's kind of a piece too. So I don't know how many of you have ever been out traveling and you find out that your credit card got canceled because you're spending it someplace that's unusual, like not in your hometown. And that's kind of, that's good because they're protecting us, the credit card companies, but it can also be annoying. So it's always a good idea to go online or give your credit card company a call before you travel and let them know where you're planning to go. And that way they can help protect you from anybody using your card, illegally.
Yeah. And through my credit union, they do have that set up. You can just do it online. So you go in, you put in like your travel dates, where you're traveling to. So if they see like these activities within that area too, you probably won't get a huge call. But I've also talked to people who didn't do that piece, and it just kind of messed with their vacation a little bit.
Yes, it's kind of, because then you're not someplace where they can send it to you easily. And also, I will say, I learned the hard way not to have me and my husband carry exactly the same credit cards. So if you have multiple credit cards, like decide which one he's going to carry and which one I'm going to carry. Because one time I was up in Chicago and I had my wallet stolen, which was bad enough but I knew right away, so I could cancel everything. But unfortunately, I had all the credit cards. So that meant we were then in Chicago on a shopping trip with no credit cards. So it all worked out. It worked, but I've learned since then to like actually go through my wallet before I go on a trip and take out things that we don't have.
Or you don't need necessarily.
Yeah. Simplify it so you're not carrying everything you don't need.
50,000 things.
And I think another thing too, when it comes to like credit card with like international travels, because for some companies, definitely you get like that international fee that you do pay. So say for example, you're traveling overseas and you're staying at a hotel that you use your credit card to pay for the hotel. There's typically an international fee that's attached to that. So in part of like your planning and all your budgeting piece, to take into consideration the fees that you might have to pay because you're using your card. So if you can travel with like some cash, it depends on like your situation or what you feel comfortable with. Like large amount of cash makes me very uncomfortable. But when you're in your planning, think about like the fees associated.
And then also, if you are planning to travel overseas a lot, you can look for credit cards that don't charge you those fees. And even the currency exchange fee, they don't charge it for you. And that can really add up, as you said. So if you're only doing, it may not be worth it if you don't travel overseas that often. But if you travel frequently for work or for fun, it can be a savings tip.
Yes. So. Wonderful. Any more questions?
Kathy's got questions too, though, so we can always ask those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Kind of talking about that staycations idea. Sometimes we just don't think about places we can go. So here's a question for you guys. Where do you take visitors but you haven't gone to in the last 5 years? Because isn't it true? Like, you don't really think about where to go locally until somebody comes to visit, and then you're like, oh, what am visit you?
So there's a popular German restaurant nearby, and like that's the only time we ever go is when people are in town. Or we have a brewery that's near us too, that we take people to for special occasions. But most people just want to eat like hot dogs and Italian beef, so when they come to visit me, which is totally fine. But that's usually it's like bigger restaurants, not necessarily nicer, but just a little bit friendlier, I guess is a good way to say it.
I know you haven't been in your location all that long, but maybe you can think about where you were somewhere else or something.
And it's funny, I know we haven't been in like Central Illinois very long, but we've had a lot of visitors. So we keep going to like some of the same places. So whether it's driving just like a couple hours away from home to maybe go to the Abraham Lincoln Museum. So going to like the museums, driving a couple hours south towards St. Louis to go see the Arch. So little things like that are not too far away from home and can be day trips.
Yeah.
That we take them to. And restaurants.
Yes, definitely
Restaurants. Yes.
Yeah, it's always restaurants for us. Like we won't go there unless we have visitors. That's like the only time that we go.
And I'm always surprised, like, it turns out, because I live in a university town, like, we have museums on campus that I never go to unless I'm bringing people that are traveling out here to see, or, other spots that are actually kind of pretty close by, but we just don't think to go until we have somebody visiting. So you might think about that, too, when you're planning your staycations. Like, where would you take somebody if they came to town? And when was the last time you actually went there?
And is it any good anymore?
Well, that too.
As we're getting close to the end of the hour, I think one thing we could talk about is apps, like travel apps.
Yeah.
Because I use those frequently, typically like airlines. I use that to check in. I found one for trails, which I thought was really cool while we were in Colorado this last weekend. Tells you all the trails, where they're located, like what the trail looks like, so you have an idea of like, oh, I just veered off the trail, or I'm still on the trail. And you can download them too, even offline, so you can still access them. Another one I use is one of those big ones where I get to see like all the things to do in that city, so things to do, restaurants, hotels. I usually use that a lot, and I review on there as well a lot of the places that we go, and so I can enjoy the things that we did and talk about them, and then, leave it for others to see like, oh, this is a really great restaurant. You should try it too.
Yeah, I think apps are a great way to explore areas and save some money often because they have good hints of where you can go and stuff.
And of course, some while you're on vacation, and the ones that you can also use to be a part of your planning once you're planning your vacation. Like a lot of people use like Airbnb apps, so they use that for helping with like booking and arranging like their travel. Some airline do kind of like the package deal, like the vacation packages that help you to figure out what you can afford and what you can take your family on.
So again, just another safety tip: before you start traveling around, make sure that you've got all your apps updated.
Yes.
Because a lot of times those updates have to do with security issues. So especially if you do banking online, or you have financial accounts, or even accounts where your credit cards there are stored. So it could be any of those things. You want to just make sure take that time before you hit the roads to make sure everything's updated.
Yeah.
Wonderful. No more questions?
I think we're just about ready to wrap this up. We might want to also talk about the fact that we have a podcast series that we've been doing for a few months here, and we would like to invite all of you to check it out.
It's on iTunes.
It's
now on iTunes, yeah.
Family Financial Feud.
You can find it on iTunes. And we recently released our most recent podcast, and it's called When Grandpa Gets Exploited, and Kathy and I discuss kind of the red flags of financial exploitation. We talk a little bit about some of the other things you should be looking for.
Yes.
It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, and it ties into like a recent article that I've been reading, and storyline from NPR too, where they're talking a lot about like brain development and how that affects like certain decisions. So check out our podcast and learn a little bit more about like the exploitation piece.
And I still think the one that Sasha and Camaya did on whether I don't remember.
Should we get a pet?
Should we get a pet? Yes, is just hilarious. So, and full of good advice. So if you're on the road and you want to listen to something on your summer vacation, you can tune into our podcast.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. We hope you learned a lot about vacations and some safety tips, some things about staycations. Maybe you didn't know about that there was travel insurance, but now you do. So good things. We appreciate Jamie for asking us questions outside of just talking about vacations. So
Yes.
we hope that you enjoyed today, and we look forward to talking to you next time.
Wonderful.
Take care.
Thank
Have
you.
a good summer vacation.